The hospital never truly slept. Even at 3 in the morning, when the world outside surrendered to darkness, the fluorescent lights inside St. Mary's Medical Center burned relentlessly. Machines hummed in low, mechanical whispers. Monitors beeped with metronomic precision, counting seconds, heartbeats, lives. Room 417 was quiet, too quiet. Henry Carter, 72 years old, lay motionless on the narrow bed, his frail body barely lifting the thin white sheet with each breath. Cancer had hollowed him out slowly, patiently, like a thief who never rushes. His once broad shoulders had narrowed, his hands that had built houses, repaired engines, and held his late wife's fingers, now trembled when he tried to lift a glass of water. But his eyes remained sharp. They were the kind of eyes that had learned how to watch more than speak. Eyes that had buried a wife, lost friends, and survived decades without bitterness. Eyes that understood pain, but did not fear it. A soft knock echoed at the door. Nurse Olivia stepped inside, clipboard pressed against her chest. She smiled gently, the kind of smile nurses perfected when they worked around death long enough to recognize it without naming it. "How are we feeling tonight, Mr. Carter?" she asked. Henry exhaled slowly. "Still here," he replied, his voice thin but steady. "That's something, I suppose." She adjusted his IV, checked the monitor, then paused. "The doctor will come by in the morning," she said carefully. "Try to rest." Henry nodded. He always nodded, not because he believed rest would change anything, but because he didn't want to make things harder for the people still fighting. When she left, silence returned. But sleep did not. Henry stared at the ceiling, tracing the faint cracks above him. They reminded him of roads on an old map, paths taken, paths missed. His thoughts drifted backward, to his wife Margaret, gone 12 years now. She had died suddenly, no time for goodbyes, just one ordinary morning, and then nothing. At least I was given time, he thought. Time to know, time to accept. A sudden sound broke his thoughts. Voices, muted, but close. From the hallway, Henry turned his head slightly, listening. 26 years old, a male voice whispered. "So young," another replied. "Top of his field, apparently. Acute liver failure after the accident. Without a transplant, he won't last the month." Henry's brow furrowed. Footsteps slowed near his door. Papers rustled. "The waiting list is long," the first voice continued. "No compatible donor yet. Tragic," the second voice sighed. He had everything ahead of him. The voices faded as they moved on. But the words stayed. 26. So young. Everything ahead of him. Henry closed his eyes, but his mind refused to follow. 2 rooms away, Ethan Miller lay surrounded by machines that worked harder than his body could. Ethan had always been the kind of man who planned his life in years, not days. At 26, he already held patents under his name. Engineers twice his age sought his ideas. He dreamed of designing systems that would change the world, clean energy, medical automation, technologies that would save lives. Now, his own life was slipping away. The accident had been sudden. A drunk driver, a twisted road, metal against metal. When Ethan woke up in the hospital days later, his liver was failing rapidly. His body, once unstoppable, had become fragile. His parents took turns at his bedside, their faces etched with fear they tried desperately to hide. His mother prayed constantly. His father stared at the wall, bargaining silently with a God he hadn't spoken to in years. Ethan heard everything, every whispered conversation, every hesitant pause before doctors spoke. Every sentence that ended with, "We'll do our best." He hated that phrase. "We'll do our best" meant we don't know. Back in room 417, Henry Carter sat up with effort, pressing the call button. Nurse Olivia returned moments later. "Everything okay?" Henry hesitated, then asked quietly. "The young man down the hall, the one you were talking about earlier." Olivia froze for half a second. She looked at Henry, surprised, not by the question, but by the clarity in his eyes. "You heard that?" Henry nodded. "Tell me about him." She hesitated. Confidentiality rules echoed in her mind, but something about Henry's tone stopped her from refusing outright. He's very sick, she said finally. Liver failure. Needs a transplant urgently. Henry swallowed. And if he doesn't get one? Olivia didn't answer immediately. Then, she began, then stopped. Then he won't make it. Henry closed his eyes. How old did you say he was? 26. Henry let out a slow breath. That's the age I was when I met my wife. Olivia said nothing. After a pause, Henry asked the question that changed everything. Am I compatible? Her heart skipped. That's a very unusual question, she said carefully. Henry looked at her, unwavering. Please, he said. Check. The tests were done quietly. Discreetly. Blood samples. Compatibility screening. No expectations. No promises. Doctors gathered later that afternoon, staring at the results in disbelief. It's a match, one whispered. A rare one, another added. But he's not a candidate for transplant himself, the surgeon said slowly. His cancer is too advanced. Silence filled the room. One doctor finally asked the question no one wanted to voice. Should we even tell him? They did. Doctor. Raymond walked into Henry's room with measured steps, pulling a chair beside the bed. Mr. Carter, he began gently, we ran the tests you asked for. Henry nodded. And, you are compatible. Henry smiled. The doctor continued quickly, but I need you to understand, this does not mean we recommend donation. Your condition. I know, Henry interrupted softly. I'm dying. The word hung in the air, calm and unafraid. Doctor. Raymond swallowed. Yes. Henry looked toward the window. The sun was setting, painting the sky in warm oranges and golds. I've lived 72 years, Henry said. I've loved. I've been loved. I've made mistakes, and made peace with them. He turned back to the doctor. That young man hasn't even begun. Doctor. Raymond leaned forward. Organ donation in your state, it's possible, but this is extraordinary. Your family. I have no family, Henry said gently. Not anymore. The doctor fell silent. Henry continued, his voice steady. I don't want my life to end slowly, attached to machines, waiting for pain to win. If my ending can be someone else's beginning, then it's not an ending at all. Tears filled the doctor's eyes. I want you to use my organ, Henry said firmly. Give him a chance. Word spread quickly through the hospital. Nurses whispered. Doctors argued. Ethics committees were called. Papers were signed. Some called it reckless. Others called it heroic. But no one could call it uninformed. Henry Carter knew exactly what he was giving up. That night, he asked for a pen and paper. He wrote a letter. Not to the young man, he didn't know his name. But to life itself. I do not give this out of sadness, he wrote. I give it out of gratitude. Because I have already been given more than enough. When Nurse Olivia read it later, she wept. Outside, rain began to fall softly against the hospital windows. Inside, preparations were underway. Two lives were about to intersect. One nearing its final chapter. One still waiting to begin. And between them stood a single, irreversible decision. The choice. Chapter 2. The operating room lights burned brighter than the sun. Everything inside street. Mary's medical center moved with mechanical precision. Gloved hands, steel instruments, whispered commands. Time, which had felt unbearably slow for weeks, suddenly accelerated. On one table lay Henry Carter. On another lay Ethan Miller. Separated by walls, united by fate. Henry's breathing was shallow as the anesthesiologist adjusted the mask over his face. His eyes remained open for a moment longer than necessary, scanning the ceiling one last time. He wasn't afraid. Fear required uncertainty, and Henry had none left. As the medicine flowed through his veins, one final thought crossed his mind. Let this mean something. Then the world faded to white. Ethan's surgery lasted over 9 hours. Outside the operating room, his parents sat in rigid silence, hands clasped so tightly their knuckles turned white. His mother whispered prayers she had memorized as a child. His father stared at the closed doors, silently begging for them to open. When the surgeon finally stepped out, removing his mask, the hallway seemed to hold its breath. The transplant was successful, he said. Ethan's mother collapsed into tears. His father closed his eyes, shoulders shaking. But the surgeon's expression remained solemn. The donor, he paused. He passed peacefully during the procedure. The words landed softly, but with enormous weight. A life had ended. Another had been pulled back from the edge. Ethan woke up 3 days later. At first, he didn't know where he was. The ceiling looked unfamiliar. The air felt heavy. His body ached in places he didn't remember hurting before. Then the machines came into focus. The slow, steady beeping. The IV lines. The surgical pain. He was alive. A nurse noticed his eyes fluttering open and rushed to his side. "You're okay," she said quickly. The surgery worked. Ethan tried to speak, but his throat was dry. When he finally managed a whisper, his voice cracked. "Who?" The nurse hesitated. "There was a donor," she said gently. "An elderly man." Something tightened in Ethan's chest. "A man gave me this," he whispered. She nodded. Ethan turned his face away, tears slipping silently into his pillow. The truth came later. Dr. Raymond sat beside Ethan's bed and told him everything. About Henry Carter, the cancer, the decision, the refusal to let doctors hesitate. Ethan listened without interruption. When the story ended, the room felt unbearably small. "He didn't know me," Ethan said finally. "No," the doctor replied. "But he believed in you." Ethan laughed weakly. "I don't deserve that, Doctor." Raymond shook his head. "None of us ever do." Recovery was slow, painful, but relentless. Ethan pushed himself harder than anyone expected. Physical therapy, breathing exercises, endless tests. He treated every moment like borrowed time, because it was. Once, while walking slowly down the hospital corridor, he stopped outside room 417. It was empty. The bed was gone, the curtains drawn, but Ethan stood there anyway, placing his hand against the door. "Thank you," he whispered. 3 months later, Ethan was discharged. The world felt different now. Colors seemed sharper, sounds louder, every breath felt intentional. He no longer rushed through life. He noticed it, but gratitude quickly turned into restlessness. Living wasn't enough, not after what had been given to him. He searched for Henry's past. Hospital records revealed little. No family, no visitors, no public footprint. Just a man who had lived quietly and died deliberately. Ethan felt an ache deeper than guilt. What do I do with a gift this big? People expected Ethan to return to engineering immediately. He didn't. Instead, he disappeared. He sold his apartment, declined job offers, ignored interviews. Rumors spread online. Some said the trauma broke him. Others said survivor's guilt consumed him. The truth was simpler. Ethan was working. 2 years later, the world heard his name again. At an international medical technology conference, whispers filled the hall as Ethan Miller took the stage. Thinner, older, but steadier. Behind him, a massive screen lit up with a single title. The Carter Protocol. Ethan paused before speaking. "I stand here today," he began, "because someone I never met chose to save me." The room went silent. He was 72, dying of cancer. He owed the world nothing. Ethan's voice trembled, but he didn't stop. "He gave me time, and time is the most dangerous gift you can give an engineer." A soft ripple of laughter passed through the crowd. Ethan continued, "So I asked myself, how do I multiply one life into thousands?" The screen changed. Charts, algorithms, hospital networks. The Carter Protocol was an AI-driven transplant coordination system, one that analyzed global donor data in real time, reduced matching delays, eliminated bureaucratic bottlenecks, and prioritized urgency with unprecedented accuracy. Clinical trials showed shocking results. Wait times reduced by over 40%. Organ wastage nearly eliminated. Thousands of lives saved. Doctors sat frozen. Investors leaned forward. This system, Ethan said, exists because one man believed a stranger's future mattered more than his own ending. The applause was thunderous, but Ethan wasn't finished. "There's one more thing," he said. The screen behind him shifted again, to a simple photograph. Henry Carter, hospital gown, gentle eyes, faint smile. "I never met him," Ethan said quietly. "But I carry him every day." The room rose to its feet. Months later, the Carter Protocol was adopted worldwide. Lives were saved in cities Henry had never visited. In countries he'd never heard of. His choice echoed through operating rooms, families, and futures he would never see. At St. Mary's Medical Center, room 417 received a plaque. In this room, a man chose humanity. Ethan visited once a year. He never stayed long. Some endings didn't need words. Because Henry Carter did not die in that hospital. He multiplied. And sometimes, the most unbelievable endings are the ones that never truly end.